concern before I move forward to my address. Much comment has been made about the talent that he quite clearly possesses and how he is somebody who is completely equipped with the right skills to serve the British Pakistani community and indeed Pakistan generally. I of course echo all of those sentiments. But like me, he is a man who believes in the work ethic. He believes that you should only receive appointment to such positions if you yourself genuinely merit such appointment. And on that basis, I wish to make it absolutely abundantly clear that I have not and will not, and neither has he ever asked me to, try and push his case to seek such an appointment. That appointment, I hope, does happen, and inshallah I hope to see it very soon. But if it happens, you will of course have my full support in delivering whatever responsibility is put to you. But I want to make it abundantly clear, I will not have played any part in that having come about, other than having provided my support over many years in the very good work that you are doing. Friends, we are this year about to embark upon another very important centenary event, and that is the start of the First World War. And I think it's important for us as overseas or British Pakistanis sat here today to remember history and to recall that the relationship between our brethren and those of us that sit in this room today and the United Kingdom or Europe as a continent is not a new relationship. It is a relationship which is intertwined in history. Our present is intertwined, and inshallah our future will be also. And I take particular pride in one instance that happened on the battlefields in Belgium. There came a point during the First World War when soldiers fighting under the British flag were outflanked. They were surrounded by the enemy. And the complete battalion that was fighting under the British flag was wiped out. Apart from one gentleman. That gentleman remained steadfast. He remained injured, had been shot, was in need of urgent medical help. But he stood his ground. And he fought. He fought gallantly. He fought because he was fighting for humanity so that we could all sit in the way that we are here today. And I'm very proud, and all of you should be very proud to know that he held out long enough in order for British reinforcements to arrive and to fight the enemy back. Had he not done so, the history of World War I would have been very different. And you can all take tremendous pride in the fact that that individual was awarded the Victoria Cross. That individual was in fact no other than one Mr. Hukundar Khan, who was the first Muslim ever to be awarded the Victoria Cross. So if there was ever a lesson or an example that was required that best demonstrates the courageous acts on behalf of humanity, then you can point to a fellow brother and say, here you have the finest example you could possibly find. I reiterate this story for one reason alone, and that is to use that as a starting point to look to the future. Much has been said about certain developments that are taking place in Pakistan today, particularly on a trade focus. Yes, it's true, the European Union is Pakistan's largest trading partner. But I can also tell you that the reason why that is the case is because it is the British government who has always steadfastly fought Pakistan's corner within the European Union. I don't make a political point. I have now been an MEP for 10 years, and I have served as an MEP representing the northwest of England with Prime Minister Tony Blair, with Prime Minister Gordon Brown, and now Prime Minister David Cameron. And in each of those prime ministerships, never has Britain's commitment to Pakistan ever been lacking in the European Union. It's true, in terms of the relationship that we are today forging between the EU and Pakistan, we have certain standards that we require Pakistan to meet. And therefore, I'm not resting on the fact that GSP Plus status has now been gained and awarded to Pakistan. I'm taking the initiative. I have just returned from Pakistan where I met with Shehbaz Sharif, Chief Minister of Punjab, which is absolutely key and vital to providing success in the GSP attainment. And I've met with him in order to discuss the criteria that needs to be met. It's the first meeting amongst many in order to ensure that we reach the scorecard that was mentioned much earlier by an earlier speaker. And the real way forward on this is to ensure that we develop business-to-business links. Once European businesses and Pakistani businesses are interacted and merged in a way, you will find that there is no need for Pakistan to once again argue for renewal of its GSP Plus status. There is no need for the British government to fight Pakistan's case in Europe. It will be European businesses themselves who are asking for the GSP Plus, not only to be renewed but extended and to develop even deeper as a relationship. And that is where the Pakistani diaspora has a role to play. When one looks at countries like Brazil, like China, like India, the very first communities those countries turn to in order to start their trading mechanism with third countries, it was their diaspora communities. And this is where all of you will have opportunities and where all of you will, if you apply your vision, gain great success, not just for yourselves, but for the United Kingdom, for Europe, and for Pakistan as well. Dr. Liaquat Mullah has already made mention of this. Along with that, it's quite natural for any country to be looking to its immediate neighbours as its starting point in order to gain the sort of recovery and energy in order to expand and move forward. In our case here in the United Kingdom, and I wish to make these points because it is absolutely imperative that I do so, the British Pakistani community is absolutely faithful to the United Kingdom, and we are committed to ensuring that we work in a way that best serves the development of the UK. And in this context, it's important that we start to prepare for two things. One is the Scottish referendum, which is due to take place. And the other, if we have a Conservative majority government after the next general election, is the European Union referendum. The reason I make this point to you is this. We must do everything we possibly can to keep the United Kingdom united. With the changing forces in the world and a clear shift of power towards the east, and you have seen this demonstrated very clearly in Syria and an ongoing situation in Ukraine today. On Friday, I returned from Brussels, and throughout the course of the day, our Prime Minister had been seated in the room with the Prime Minister of Ukraine right next to him as we made decisions as to what was going to happen. those who today are putting forward arguments that Britain should not be in that room by being in the European Union effectively want to exclude the United Kingdom from the world stage. And please be ready for one thing. If you have friends and family in Scotland, contact them for this reason. If it is the case that Scotland decides to become independent and move out of the United Kingdom, rest assured there are already discussions taking place in places like Beijing and Moscow that question the right of our country, the United Kingdom, to maintain its seat on the United Nations Security Council. And those that argue that the Commonwealth is going to come riding to our rescue to make sure we maintain that seat, they should know that there is one Commonwealth nation, India, that is today vying to try and take that seat. I make that point because as a community, we must do what we can to protect our country, both the United Kingdom and Pakistan. And with that, I wish to finish on a very positive note. I hear much talk all the time about the difficulties that we feel and see and are a reality in Pakistan. But getting a global view and having the opportunity to see 28 economies in some considerable detail, Pakistan is not alone in experiencing these things. We have seen food price inflation globally. We have seen fuel price inflation globally. We have seen an increase in poverty globally. We have seen an increase in disparity between different sections of society globally. This is not a phenomenon that is only existing in Pakistan. I can tell you, in the 28 member states of the European Union, we have exactly those same challenges. Maybe not magnified in the same way, but we have the same challenges. So when it comes to Pakistan, what state of affairs are we in if people like us today down tools and give up? No, I'm not willing to accept this. And I'm not willing to accept it from myself or from any of you. Our brethren in Pakistan should know one thing, that regardless of what our own affiliations may be, when it comes to an issue of goodwill for Pakistan, they will always find us completely united, and they will always find us ready to serve without there being a need for them to ask, not a second time, but even to have to ask a first time. And that is where the overseas Pakistanis community role has to be at the forefront. We have so much of which to be proud. This room is a minute example of the success that our communities have achieved. We talk so much about Muslim communities in the United Kingdom. So let's just examine the situation. Amongst those, Pakistanis are not the largest. We haven't been here the longest. Economically, we are not the strongest. In business, we are not as strong as some other communities. In education, we find there are many more people that may be ahead of us. But you know, Barrister Ahmedin made mention of success based upon contribution of our forefathers. That's quite right. Without them, the last bastion that any community ever breaks through is one of political representation. You look at the numbers of councillors we have. Mayors spread right across the country. The first Muslim to be elected to our national parliament was a Pakistani. The first Muslim to be appointed to the British government was a Pakistani. The first Muslim to be appointed to the shadow cabinet was a Pakistani. The first Muslim to be appointed as a minister in the British government, Pakistani. first Muslim to get elected from the UK to the European Parliament, well, the credit goes to the Pakistani community here in the northwest of England. And when I see these things, and sometimes I hear very defeatist arguments coming all the time, no, these are challenges that we face. I hope we can all walk away from this room today in that celebratory mood and geared up to make sure that we are ready to face all of the challenges that I've highlighted in my short address today. I thank you.